Welcome back. I'm Bre Payton in for Liz Wheeler. The Republican Party's effort to repeal Obamacare is on the verge of collapse. Republicans haven't been able to effectively respond to attacks from Democrats claiming that their health care plan would literally kill people. Let's take a listen.
If 23 million Americans were to be thrown off the insurance they currently have, which is what the House bill would do, up to 28,000 Americans every single year could die. That is 9 times more than the tragic losses we suffered on 9/11 every single year.
With me now to break it all down is Conservative Rebuke contributor Dr. Tom Borelli. Dr. Borelli, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Bre, great to be with you.
So I wanted to get your response to what Bernie Sanders said just a minute ago. Is this bill literally like 9/11, and will it literally kill thousands of people?
Well, once again, we have the Democrats with the extreme rhetoric, making these wild and false claims that any Republican plan is actually going to kill and harm Americans. And that's completely ridiculous. And Mr. Sanders really should be ashamed of himself for, such outrageous rhetoric. But this is what the Democrats have been doing of late. The reality is, if Americans will be able to buy insurance, if they don't want to buy the insurance, that's up to them. It's the individual's fault, not the Republicans.
Yeah, and this kind of extreme rhetoric really bothers me because I think we could really just say the same thing about Obamacare and the way that it operated and, the Medicaid expansion and a lot of people who are now reliant upon Medicaid for their health care, and now the reimbursement rates for healthcare providers is really terrible. So a lot of people, when they do have Medicaid, they can't get a doctor to see them. So they're waiting in emergency rooms and the wait times in emergency rooms have really skyrocketed. So we could turn around and say, well, Obamacare is killing all these people because they're all waiting in emergency rooms and they're literally dying in waiting rooms while they're trying to see people. So I really get bothered by this line of rhetoric and this kind of extreme reaction, which, as you said, has no basis in reality. I want to get back to some of the politics about the current bill that's going to be introduced tomorrow morning. Mitch McConnell says that we're going to get some more details coming out of that tomorrow morning. Do you think that bill will be able to pass?
I'm not sure, and I'm really concerned about the legislation because it seems like the Senate plan seems worse even than the House plan, and it seems like they're, again, tinkering around the edges. One of the last news stories I saw, they wanted to keep a tax on families, and some sort of tax on families that earn $250,000 or more. Well, that's not really a tax on the wealthy, and the Republicans surely shouldn't be offering any plan that taxes the American people. I mean, it's simply outrageous. Republicans have had years to work on a plan, and they can't get it done. One of the problems, actually, is because there's a lot of Republicans, especially in the Senate, but there's not enough conservatives. And at Conservative Review, we have a scorecard, and you would be shocked at the number of senators that use the Republican label that get a failing grade because they're not conservatives.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think they are so terrible? This is something that pretty much all of them, or most of them, I should say, ran on repealing Obamacare in full. This is something that they promised the American people over the past 8 years, over and over again. And now when they get their chance, they're really just not doing it. Why do you think that they're not following through on their word? And why are they so awful?
Well, because, they're really concerned about, unfortunately, not the American people. They're concerned about staying in office. That is the problem. They're afraid if they take a risk like repealing Obamacare, kind of like they promised when they were running for election, they might get some negative headlines and maybe somebody will run against them. But listen, that's what happens in politics. They were elected, remember, by the American people and the Tea Party especially, of which I was part of, really to repeal Obamacare completely. And they're just tinkering around the edges. They're not really going for fundamental reform. I think Dr. Rand Paul has a great idea about trying to expand the pools, having the ability for people to self-associate. Imagine that, freedom. And by the bigger pool, you'd actually reduce costs.
Yeah, I think what really frustrates me about this bill is how unconservative it is. And you talked about how it seems like the Senate version of this bill is actually going to be worse. I was frustrated watching Republicans start out this whole thing from the standpoint of, oh, well, we have to keep portions of Obamacare. And I think that repealing portions of it in piecemeal, as they are doing now, and leaving other portions of it in place, I think it's going to be more problematic and potentially more deadly, as liberals like to call it, and more dangerous for our, fiscal portion and our fiscal health of America than just leaving Obamacare in place. What do you think about that? Do you think that this bill has the potential to be worse than Obamacare?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's got the potential for Republican political suicide. I think both plans, both the House bill and the Senate bill, the premiums and deductibles will be increasing in the first few years. Hello, in 2018, there's an election. How is a Republican going to get elected on the promise? First, I promised you I was going to repeal Obamacare. Oh, by the way, now your premium costs are even higher. So as a baseline, let's say in Arizona, where the premium costs went up, over 100%, they're going to tack another 15 and 20% of premiums on that. How are you going to get reelected on that?
Yeah. What do you think Republicans should be focused on doing next?
Well, I think they really just need to go back to the drawing board. I think they should just really hold off. I think they need to go for full repeal and figure a way to get free market policies back in our healthcare system. If they tinker around the edges, if they come out with Obamacare light, they're going to actually lose seats in 2018 and maybe even further into 2020 because they lied to the American people. And remember what happened to Democrats when they lied. How many lies did President Obama make with Obamacare? And he paid a political price in terms of losing, many seats in the House and the Senate. Republicans, they're going to repeat that bad history.
Dr. Borelli, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for being with us today.